storms begin, God our Maker will provide for our wants to be supplied. Come to God's own temple, come, raise the song of harvest hope. All the world is but a field given for a fruitful yield, wheat and tares together sown, here for joy or sorrow grown. First the blade and then the ear, then the full corn shall appear. God of harvest, grant that we wholesome grain and pure may be.
This is a new day. This is a new day, full of sound and light and expectation. This day has been waiting for you. This day has been waiting especially for you, and you, and you. This is the day we have been given. Let's not waste it. Come now and let us worship together. Wonderful to be with you all this morning. My name is Reverend Joseph Boyd. I'm very proud to be minister of this church, a church that is on the land of the Erie and the Osage, a church that before and after the Rittenhouse verdict has claimed that Black Lives Matter, and that is our challenge as people of faith, to live into that promise and that reality in this country. I'm very glad to be here. We had a wonderful production of a play yesterday, wonderful production of the Thanksgiving play by Larissa Fasthorse, a Lakota playwright. Sharp, funny. Thank you for everyone across the country who participated in that, people from Portland, Oregon, Jennifer Ruth Boyd, who was excellent. Just wonderful, wonderful production, and I'm so glad we had the opportunity to be together for that. It's pledge drive season, so I have the update for you where we are. We are 1 week away from the end of our pledge drive. We have now $69,118. That means, drum roll, we have $85,882 to meet our budget for next year. So that is our commitment as leaders of this church. We will be transparent with you every step of the way. I hope that if you have any questions, you feel free to ask us. We're hoping we can meet our budget of $154,000 to maintain our staff and our services. So if you haven't turned in your pledge card, please do. If you have never pledged and you want to pledge, we would welcome that. Please do. And thank you, our stewardship team, who has really made this all possible. And they're going to be the ones making calls. Please save them a phone call and turn in your pledge card. And I'd also like to announce we have meditation tonight on our Zoom channel. I'm so glad all of you who are joining us from across the world. I know we have people all over the country, from California to New York City, people on Facebook Live right now and also later on YouTube who have joined us from the Dominican Republic, Egypt, across the world. You're going to get, hopefully, a little bit of a unique perspective on a very American holiday, Thanksgiving, this Sunday, and I'm so glad that you can join us. And you're welcome to join us on this Zoom channel, 7 p.m. Eastern Time for meditation, led by Linda Scharf, a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner that's available to anyone here. And Kathleen Hogue, you have a couple announcements about religious education.
I'd like to invite everyone to join us later today at 4:30 p.m. for a gathering outside on the patio, or a little bit above the patio, because we're going to have a fire pit up there, and we're going to have storytelling, s'mores, and hot chocolate around the fire. So that'll be at 4:30 this evening. Rain or shine, I'll be there. So hopefully somebody will come out with me. Also, we do have class today for any children who are attending, and we'll be going out this door after the time for all ages. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathleen. Good morning, everybody. I have been asked to share with you why I pledge to UUYO. My name is Paula Lee Doyle. My origin story begins in Ireland and then as an immigrant to the United States. For the past 37 years, I have dedicated myself to the science of human development, rooted in Montessori education. This work is centered upon observing the needs of children and adolescents, and then providing the optimal conditions in which they can fulfill their development, to adapt to their culture, fulfill their innate drives, and contribute to a more peaceful society. Ultimately, children who can grow thus form successive generations of evolving humankind, each generation building upon the preceding one for a more peaceful humanity. These are the values I hold dear. My lived spiritual roots in Ireland were among the Quakers, but when I came to the United States, most of my spiritual development was that of the head, by reading and examining spirituality and practice, and exploring some of the other organized monotheistic religions. I found their structure and spirituality, the exclusivity, it wasn't aligning for me. And so eventually I stopped searching for a special spiritual community and then focused instead on service and practice, to be that agent of peace in putting all my energy into my work and education. As the years passed, the world around me seemed to be increasing in scarcity and social fragmentation. The life force of adults and children seemed to be diminishing away from fulfilling their needs and human potential. I witnessed so many of us in the United States were increasingly emotionally dysregulated and motivated more by fear than love, as we were striving to meet our fundamental needs. I observed that many of us were increasingly vulnerable to the manipulation of extreme political rhetoric, and were moving further from compassion and more toward dominance and violence. My work in Montessori education alone seemed to be having little effect on moving the needle on the dial towards conditions for peace. I needed a community who passionately is questioning and contributing to justice, with whom I can deepen a practice of love, and with whom we might develop new ways to be better together. I needed to connect with others, working toward restoration while learning from all spiritual practices, rather than any one religious tradition. With this yearning, I walked under the banner of Black Lives Matter to enter the UU Church building on Wick Park. Here, I found a community to which I could feel connection, and where being part of a collective might more effectively move that needle on the dial toward a more just and peaceful world. Every Sunday, we give voice to love is the spirit of this church, and service, its law. This is why I pledge to the work of this community. The rocks that hold the foundation of UUYO community resilience include sharing our time, sharing our talent, and sharing our treasure. I don't have an abundance of time nor talent to offer, but I can offer treasure. I do that to match the time and talent that I see others give to this community. While I have employment that allows it, my pledging to UUYO is another way of expressing my gratitude and my wish to contribute to the circulatory system of this community, to retain the staff salaries, technology, and other resources needed to keep the lights on and the heart beating in this community. I hope my story resonates with some of your stories, and your connection to UUYO might inspire your commitment to pledge whatever is significant to you. Search your emails from UUYO office to find that pledge card, or click on the homepage of the website, or call the UUYO office to make your pledge. In deep gratitude for connection, for this community, in service and love. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. What a beautiful and powerful giving voice. And now the chalice lighting. Each of us holds history in different versions and capacities based on a multitude of factors. This Thanksgiving, I will travel to New Jersey with my daughter and parents to commune with my sister and her family. The house she and her husband purchased recently holds history, and that the main structure of the house dates back to the early 1700s. We will gather around a hearth in a room that is slated to have seated early colonists. We will walk through local parks on land which would have seen the Horseneck Riots. The riots precluded the American Revolution by 30 years and were due to the disagreement as to whether the Lord Proprietors would honor a land deed signifying the sale of the land, 14,000 acres, in exchange for some $325 worth of goods, from the Lenape tribe to the settlers of Horseneck. In the end, of course, the Lord Proprietors found the deed null and void and took ownership of the land, evicting the settlers, and in some rare cases, allowing some settlers to purchase tracts of land. At present, my sister's neighborhood, though lined with these historic structures, appears more like a nature preserve. Amongst the old-growth trees, varied species of birds, scurries of squirrels, the herds and herds of deer that ate all of my sister's mums this year. You would never guess you were 24 miles from Manhattan, 22 miles from the Atlantic Ocean. So this Thanksgiving, I will join my family and gather in front of a hearth with 5 family units, each containing a story and history both as similar and unique as the collective and the individual. The units differ vastly in that one unit contains a widow. 2 are led by single parents. 1 unit has been married for 45 years, and 1 is expecting a new baby. Admittedly, in the past, in more volatile years, before I committed to walking a path of equanimity, before I comprehended the history we are each blessed and burdened with, I skipped some of these meals. The pain of the past, the uncertainty, the anxiety of what might erupt when we brought together our histories, spoken and unspoken, was too much to bear. But also, admittedly, when I skipped these meals, I felt cut off from a part of myself, dissociated. And I must say, I'm truly thankful for all of the history of suffering I hold today that has cracked me open and created space so that I might once again commune with family, both given and chosen. And most importantly, I don't have to hold it all anymore. I can share it, I can write it down, I can let it go. As we light this chalice, let us commit to making space within ourselves to hold history with gentle awareness, to honor our needs, and to commit to engage with the possibilities that emerge when we stay in the moment, when we come to terms with all that is our history.
What is it to be an American? to live in a strange and beautiful land of complexity with a turbulent history of epic proportions, among the people who were here first, who came after, who will come tomorrow. We Are America by Walter Dean Myers and Christopher Myers. Before there was America, before the ships came, their white sails ablaze against the clear blue sky, my Lakota heart pounded the rhythms of this sacred land. The warm spirit of the sun burned in my bosom as my sons raced the wind, as my father sat in a curl of legend, as my grandmother stitched the giving earth to the distant sky. A golden eagle, his wings spread like the Great Spirit's open arms, flew over my people in the Comanche and the Iroquois. Its shadow passed Navajo and Hopi. It soared and soared, while sitting in the warm circle of my village, I dreamed. Before I knew that there was America, I had a freedom dream. The light and color of discovery lay just beyond the next wave, the next sunrise. I believed there was more than the trembling heart, the careful peering into the darkness, the promise of the rising tide. I dreamed a freedom dream. I heard a freedom song, the pull of hope, the taut bow of anticipation, the arrow of adventure, flying across the ocean. I found an endless land, its promise flowering in lush fields, purple mountains etching their majesty in the pure air, flat plains that absorbed the warm summer rains, canyons that swallowed the imagination, and freedom. Freedom like water on the tongues of thirsting men, freedom as sweet as young love. Before there was an America, I lit my fire at the mouth of the Congo. I watched a dark wisp of smoke cut a silver moon in half, knowing it was a praise prayer. Before there was an America, I forged iron in Guinea and brass in Benin. Each morning I summoned the sun over the Ogun River. Each night I watched the sunset as it bled behind the mosques at Timbuktu. I found no freedom in this strange and beautiful land. But freedom lived in my heart, like an eagle longing to fly. We called ourselves Bostonians, New Yorkers, Georgians, Americans. We were the youth that could not fail, planting our high ideals in virgin lands and eager hearts, making vows forever brighter than the story we would live, pledging an allegiance to liberty and justice that would forever mark us as a people. We raised up factories and farms, great houses and small, structures to challenge the pyramids, a free society busily creating a universe that only we could imagine. And still, we wanted more. We wanted to be free of tyranny, free from kings and queens, to pursue our own ideas, our own destiny. No, we demanded it. We were willing to die to forge our dream, knowing it was not enough to simply be. We needed to create ourselves in the image of the new mind, separated from our past, our history. Like clumsy children, we fell as we learned to run, stumbled as we invented our own truths. We were America, but we were also thousands of souls smothering beneath the hatches, a chorus of chaos filling the air at wounded knee. Ambition betrayed us. Power was too strong a temptation. And yet, we learned to light the darkness with the blazing torch that is the Constitution. We moved on stubbornly, shedding our blood to prove who we were, that we were a high-minded people, courageous. We died at Shiloh and Antietam Creek, at Fort Wagner. We suffered at Gettysburg and Atlanta. Fell to the earth at Vicksburg, cried out in the lonely night on Lookout Mountain. We emerged wounded and weary, but believing in the idea of a dream that would be forever great, proud to call that dream America. We were machines, belching smoke, pushing carts, baking bricks, cleaning sewers, inventing, daring, lifting our hopes to the skies that suddenly seemed within reach. We were Irish muscle and Polish pride, Germans and Italians, Africans and Chinese, Mexican and English. We spoke 100 languages. We were laborers building the hugeness, the fantasy that was the United States of America. We built silver rails, stretching to the far horizon, factories pounding out iron and steel, cars, planes, steamboats sailing down the Erie, the Hudson, the Missouri, the Mississippi, trolleys across the heart of Harlem. We were the flat gold plains of Kansas, feeding a hungry world, the snow-tipped Rocky Mountains scratching God's belly, the twisting route of the Chisholm Trail, the coverlet of bluebonnets along the Texas roadside, bold and beautiful and breathtaking America. We are America, the land of the free, wealthy beyond belief and not wealthy, the land of equal opportunity and not equal, the land of justice and injustice. And from the tensions, from the struggle between conscience and human frailty, between the great hope of tomorrow and the forever hunger of today, we have found our nation. To each child, a freedom dream. To each soul, the sweet taste of liberty. To each heart, give the promise of America.
A couple housekeeping things I forgot to mention for those who are here. We're not going to be passing the plate during the offertory. You're going to see there's a plate behind you and a plate at the exit here. So use the offertory time to meditate on your offering, and I would invite you, maybe your pledge, if you haven't turned that in, and then you can turn it in on the way out as you leave. Also, our hall downstairs is being refinished. So we're going to be staying up here during the service. You can make your way out. You're also welcome to talk to each other here. We're not going to be using Channing Hall for at least a couple weeks. And we're not doing a traditional greeting line. So I'll be here. Don't feel like you have to come up and talk to me, but you're welcome to. So I won't be going out at the end. I'll just be right here. So now, with Jim, yeah? Yes, and the restroom, if you need it, is right around the corner. So if you go down this hall, it's right around to the left. Thanks, Jim. And now our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Each month, we donate all loose cash and unmarked checks put in the offering plate to a nonprofit organization whose mission and actions are consistent with the UU principles and the mission of UUYO. For the month of November, our organization is the Community Volunteer Council. The mission of CVC is to volunteer services in our community, to be informed of and to inform the public of existing agencies and the services they offer, and to educate persons of their rights as residents in the state of Ohio, Trumbull County, and the city of Warren. The CVC was organized in September 1979 by Sadie Parks. Parks recognized a need for a strong group that would consist of members of all the churches in the community, both city and county. Since then, CVC has been devoted to helping the low-income families of Trumbull County for over 38 years. In the mid-1980s, a nucleus group of ladies were called together from local churches and they gathered to make drapes for a nursing home. The women soon discovered that they shared a passion for giving back to their community, and in particular, to helping local families. What began as a small circle of church women soon evolved into the Community Volunteer Council and became a united effort by the women of the council to provide food, clothing, and household items for people in need. Each month, CVC distributes groceries to our Warren neighbors. Last year, CVC served 892 families through food distribution, and 1,453 clients shopped in the clothing center. The CVC also organizes special holiday events to give away meals and toys to children. We will now receive the offering that supports the life of Youngstown, the Mahoning Valley, and our wider world.
What a joy it is to be with you this morning. I have not stood in this place for it seems like a lifetime. And I wish I could just run out there and give you all a hug. But for now, hi, everybody. I'm thrilled to have with us this morning my friends from Mississippi, deep in the Mississippi Delta. Reverend Steve Fortenberry is with us, and his daughter Sarah is with us this morning. Glad you're here. This is a song for the holidays, for the Thanksgiving season, that was written by Carrie Newcomer. Let our hearts not be tarred. To those living on the margins, there is room at the table for everyone. This is where it all begins. This is how we gather in. There is room at the table for everyone. Too long we have wandered, burdened and undone, but there is room at the table for everyone. Let us sing the new world in. This is how it all begins. There is room at the table for everyone. There is room for us all, and no gift is too small. There is room at the table for everyone. There's enough if we share. Come on up, pull up a chair. There is room at the table for everyone. No matter who you are, no matter where you're from, there is room at the table for everyone. Here and now we can be the beloved community. There is room at the table for everyone. There is room for us all, and no gift is too small. There is room at the table for everyone. There's enough if we share. Come on, pull up a chair. There is room at the table for everyone. There is room at this table for everyone.
Good morning. Yesterday, November 20th, was the National Day of Transgender Remembrance. It's a day that we honor the memory of our transgender brothers and sisters who've been killed in acts of anti-transgender violence. During our meditation, may we hold their memories in our hearts. Thank you.
A reading from The Merchant of Venice, Act 4, Scene 1, from William Shakespeare. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. 'Tis mightier in the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his scepter, which shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty, wherein doth sit the dread of fears of kings. But mercy is above the scepter's sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute to God himself, and earthly power doth then show likest gods when mercy seasons justice.
A reading. The poem Perhaps the World Ends Here by our beloved 23rd Poet Laureate, Joy Harjo. Perhaps the world ends here. The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teeth at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. We make men at it. We make women. At this table, we gossip, recall enemies and the ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together once again at the table. This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory. We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table, we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite.
Grateful for each hand we hold, gathered round this table, and far and near we travel home, blessed that we are able, grateful for this sheltered place, with light in every window. Say welcome, welcome, share this feast. Come in away from sorrow. Father, mother, daughter, son, neighbor, friend, and friendless. all together, everyone, in the gift of loving kindness. Grateful for what's understood and all that is forgiven. We try so hard to be so good, to lead a life worth living. Father, mother, daughter, son, neighbor, friend, and friendless, all together, everyone, let grateful days be endless. Grateful for each hand we hold, gathered round this table.
Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. I don't know if that shocks you, surprises you. It's my favorite. The reasons for this are as particular and complicated as the history of the peoples in this country. I was born a Jehovah's Witness, many of you know that. And every time the teacher in school would discuss the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag people, my parents asked that I be excused to go to the library. They found the lesson religiously inappropriate. My parents told me as a kid that those stories that your teacher tells are lies, encouraged to build up a sense of nationalism, a sense that we deserved what we got as a country. And it covered up our sins as a nation in the process. So, it was religiously inappropriate to hear them. I reflect all these years later that, in essence, I agree with my parents. Those stories are religiously inappropriate. They're full of hubris, lies, false narratives, in order to give a false sense of unity. You might be wondering at this point, why is this my favorite holiday? I'm going to get to that in a little bit. First, I want to say that Thanksgiving is the American holiday. It points to our strangeness, our complexity, our disappointments, our history, and a certain sweetness. George Washington was the first president to make Thanksgiving a national holiday, and it had nothing to do with the Mayflower. It was a holiday of thanksgiving to God for granting the United States victory over the British. The third president, Thomas Jefferson, was a deist with Unitarian sympathies, and he didn't believe God worked that way, intervening to give one people victory over another. So Jefferson rescinded the national holiday and said nobody in the United States should ever celebrate Thanksgiving. It is based on lies. Then the following president said, in essence, Jefferson is too Unitarian, and God does indeed favor the United States. So everyone, go back to celebrating it. You can see a pattern developing already, can't you? For most of the history of this country, the southern United States saw Thanksgiving as a Yankee holiday, something they wanted nothing to do with. Especially during Reconstruction, after the Civil War, southern states protested by not celebrating Thanksgiving. There were recorded fights between Southerners and Northerners during this time, when a Northerner would glibly say to a Southerner, "Have a happy Thanksgiving." Some historians argue that the only reason why Thanksgiving was accepted in the South was because a tradition began when major college football teams would play on Thanksgiving Day, and Southerners could not resist football. So they eased their way into accepting it. In modern history, many of you know this, FDR moved Thanksgiving after saying it should be the fourth Thursday. He eventually moved it to the third Thursday in November at the request of the president of the board of Macy's and other major business owners who wished to encourage Christmas shopping as early as possible following the Great Depression. I found this great website who tried to explain Thanksgiving to people who are not Americans. And there's some real gems in this description. It made me look at myself a little differently. One was just very simple. Most Americans will eat more on Thanksgiving than on any other day in the entire year. This is my favorite. Thanksgiving meals tend to be shorter in duration when family members have political differences. So, even among white people, Thanksgiving is a strange holiday with a complex history. But probably when someone mentions the controversy over Thanksgiving, what most people think of nowadays is the colonial history with indigenous tribes, their brutality, stealing, and cruelty of the Pilgrims and other settlers. There's something I learned about this year which I didn't know before. Some of you know there is a National Day of Mourning that takes place in Plymouth, Massachusetts, hosted by the Wampanoag and other peoples across the United States in support of indigenous sovereignty and land protection. But I didn't know the origin of this event until this year. The origin was in 1970. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts was commemorating the 350th anniversary of the Mayflower landing. And they invited Frank Wamsuta James, as leader of the Wampanoag tribe, to give a speech to commemorate this event. The representatives, congressmen, and other politicians demanded to see a copy of the speech before James gave it. In the speech, Frank Wamsuta James not once praised the Pilgrims, and instead talked about the legacy of false narratives, and particularly this damaging false narrative on his people's health and well-being. A PR person read this speech in 1970 and had a freak-out moment and wrote quickly an alternative speech which emphasized this false narrative, how the Pilgrims were given God's grace and this country. A heroic false narrative. And they gave this speech to Frank Wamsuta James to give. Understandably, James refused to give this speech, and out of that came the National Day of Mourning in protest, held in Plymouth since then, every single year at the site of the Mayflower landing. I can't help but wonder what would have happened if they would have not only allowed but welcomed Frank Wamsuta James's speech. What if, I wonder, all these politicians and leaders had the courage to embrace a more complicated, painful, and true narrative? What if, and I can't help but wonder this, they would have shown gratitude to James for offering this instead of fear? I wonder that. It's the same burning question we have today. Can we be honest and be grateful? Can we be honest and be grateful? I think we are still stuck in this country thinking that we have to choose one or the other. We think we have to choose a very narrow and shallow way of living. Either we can be grateful, and that means we have to distance ourselves from feeling and really taking in anything that's complicated, unpleasant, and contradictory to a happy narrative. Or on the other extreme, we can be honest. We can look at this current and present history, but then how can we be grateful? We will have to be cynical, hardened, and angry all the time. As Americans, we often treat our history like a game of hot potato. Did you ever play that game as a kid? Hot potato? We often treat our history like a game of hot potato. Get it away from me. You deal with it. No, you deal with it. But I think in time, if we're fortunate, we find a community like this. We're not perfect. We're far from that. But we have some tools. And eventually we learn to invest in a good pair of gloves so we can hold this history, this hot potato, without harming ourselves and without harming other people. We can learn the peace of not having to run away from who we are and where we came from. And our vision can expand. I really love Joy Harjo's poem, Perhaps the World Ends Here. She richly and beautifully explores another question, which is our question this Thanksgiving. If the world is ending, how will you respond? When the world ends, when the world that we know ends and another world comes to birth on the horizon, how will you respond? In this time, still in the throes of a pandemic that is changing how we relate to each other in very fundamental ways, in the aftermath of the Rittenhouse verdict, in a time when many of us are just hanging on by a thread of sanity, how will we respond? There was a project led by members of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe asking individuals from different tribes across the United States whether they celebrated Thanksgiving. The responses to this question were incredibly diverse. Some understandably said they don't celebrate this holiday. And some said they did, and they said why. A couple of those responses resonated with me personally. They said they celebrate Thanksgiving because they are still here. And that is worth being grateful for. It has nothing to do with pilgrims, nothing to do with white people. It's about their life, their family's life, and gratitude they made it through another season, sometimes against the odds. That is why Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. I'm still here. You're still here. Sometimes against the odds. The world is still here. For now. And that is worth sitting down and honoring and being grateful for. And I love the food, and I eat way too much. Perhaps the world is ending. Perhaps we are living through some kind of shift where the world that we know is ending, and another one is actually being reborn right now in this moment. If so, I want to be there for that last sweet bite. Not in a greedy, fearful, or anxious way. I want to hold the complexity and truth of this moment, and in holding that, I pray for transformation. I want to hold it so I can be transformed. I want to be made into a real person, someone who can welcome all of life, including its sweetness, especially its sweetness. I want to be a person who can be honest and be grateful. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for all of you. I'm grateful you're still here. For all those who are indigenous in this country, I'm grateful you're still here, especially in the context of this pandemic. Let us focus on that this year, and may we have a new Thanksgiving. Let us pray. Spirit of love, I'm grateful for the wonders of the world. I'm grateful to be part of a community like this where my vision can expand. I'm grateful to be part of a community like this where I'm given tools to hold history without harming myself and harming other people. I'm grateful for the humility to know that I have so much further to go in this life to truly embrace the beloved community. And I am so grateful for the sweetness of life, the wonders that never cease. All this we pray. Amen.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, and also the faces of the people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts until we meet again.
Part, please remember the one great fact: you are loved and never truly alone.
Let it go, my love, my truest. Let it sail on silver wings. Life's a twinkling, that's for certain, but it's such a fine thing. There's a gathering of spirits, there's a festival of friends, and we'll take up where we left off when we all meet again. Oh, I can't explain it, I couldn't if I tried, how the only things we carry are the things we hold inside. Like a day in the open, like a love we won't forget, like the laughter that we started and it hasn't died down yet. Let it go, my love, my truest. Let it sail on silver wings. Life's a twinkling, that's for certain, but it's such a fine thing. There's a gathering of spirits, there's a festival of friends, and we'll take up where we left off when we all